Business Action Momentum Enterprise interactive Zoom session. Many of us here know what the organization is about. We are a community organization, and one of our primary aims is to advance economic transformation, enhance the economic participation of people, Black people in the British economy, so we can achieve sustainability. We also try to ensure that individuals or communities do not suffer through lack of their rights and responsibility or through an inability to express their needs effectively. And wherever possible, we try to exercise responsible influence in the development of social policies locally and hopefully nationally. So it's really to create sustainability in X amount of ways in our community. We're a membership organization, but I can go into that at another time because we're all familiar with membership in the group here at this point in time. But I would like to welcome Miss Councillor Sharon Thompson. Councillor Sharon Thompson is a cabinet member for homelessness and housing. Is it, Lady Thompson?
Yeah. So I've got housing, homelessness, bereavement services, which includes the cemeteries, crematoriums, the courts, the mortuaries, localism agenda, and also registrars, which is sort of births, deaths and marriages registrations. So I have quite a big brief.
During our preamble, you did say you had a massive portfolio, but I did not wildly imagine that you covered so much. And because Birmingham City Council is the largest local authority in the UK?
No, it's the largest local authority in Europe.
Marcia, you never tell me that before. No, that's right. Oh my gosh. So yeah, excellent. As I was saying, I really think you've done well. Before I even go and say that, what inspired you to actually pursue the occupation that you're in? What inspired you? What motivated you?
I think it goes back some time. So 10 years ago, I made an active decision that I was going to change my life in a decade. And that's what I decided one morning. Just that. I didn't know what it was going to look like, but I made this decision. And growing up, I was a homeless teenager. So the life that I had previously in my teens was sort of the life that people would write about when they're trying to get funding for bids. You know, it was this kind of disadvantaged communities. I ticked all the boxes.
Okay.
But I didn't want to be a victim of life issues. I wanted to be victorious through them. And that meant actually, that actually meant speaking up and using my voice in different spaces. So WAITS, Women Acting in Today's Society, would often take me to London with Marcia Lewinson, and we would speak to people in the Home Office, and we talk about things that affected disadvantaged communities. I found myself sitting on platforms with people like John Burko, who was the previous Speaker of the House, talking about the issues for women getting into politics. So it's really about, I just basically felt like politics didn't reflect who I was and what I'd been through. And I always say that when you're disillusioned with politics, that's when politics needs you most. So I thought I would take up the challenge.
Absolutely. Can I ask you, did you ever watch the film Sixes from Kathy Come Home? Have you ever watched that movie?
I haven't, but I will.
Yeah, you should do, because it's very much like what you said that you went through, homelessness and so on and so forth. Because Kathy Come Home, I think it was Vanessa Redgrave who started it, but that film actually triggered off the inception of social housing in this country. Because prior to that, as you know, it's Ratman style landlords and so on and so forth. And they are coming back again, because I'm sure you must see the way things are going. But that is, when I did my, I was with the Chartered Institute for Housing. I did my, forget what the qualification was, but one of the things that we actually was told to do is to watch Kathy Come Home. Very good, very good movie.
I'm gonna make a note of that, Bill.
Yeah, Kathy Come Home.
It's on Netflix.
You mentioned briefly about your portfolio, but maybe you could go into a little bit more regarding your role and responsibilities. I mean, with this situation here with burials and stuff like that, that's caused a bit of a furore in the city. And I've seen X amount of pieces by you, given the reasons as to why we cannot, there can't be a barrage or a multitude of people that we used to do before.
And I think this is the point when because some people don't understand the role that I do. Because I'm not operational, it tends to be, it's a little bit, it's more strategic, and it's about the vision and the leadership. So, and I think actually COVID is the point where you actually saw more of what the type of decision makings we had to make. And when it came to COVID-19, I was very clear that in all of the bits of the portfolio was, one was to protect people from infection as much as possible, and to reduce the likelihood of the spread of the infection was very important to me. And also trying to allow people to still have a dignified send off when it came to bereavement services, but acknowledging that life is not the way it normally is. We have to live slightly differently in order to get around this. So I had to make a series of difficult decisions. And it's never quite straightforward when you're in a role like this, because you have to take into consideration the different communities, different religious needs, cultural practices. With the Black community, we mourn quite openly. We like to spend time around each other. It means so much to us. So to be putting restrictions on people was very difficult. And in Birmingham, we went down as far as only 6 mourners allowed into the cemetery for funerals. And that was difficult. And again, it was about trying to reduce the likelihood of the spread of the virus. So my attitude very much was, if having less people at the cemeteries mourning meant less funerals full stop, or reducing the likelihood of more deaths, then that was the direction we needed to go, and that was the direction I took it in. We also had, Birmingham's a very diverse city, and different cultures have different needs, and it attracted some of the actions and behaviours of, I would have to say, some of my colleagues, attracted some right-wing attitudes. So we had people like Katie, what's her name? Katie Hopkins, interested and tweeting. So we really had to think about the community cohesion side of it. So yes, so it's been very difficult, and I know it's very difficult for families to mourn, but we are going to start looking at how do we help people as we come out of this, about maybe holding open more memorials and things like that. So it's very difficult in the decision making. A Zoom call.
I don't know if it's fair for me to ask you this. Birmingham, there was, talk about Birmingham locking down certain areas in Birmingham locking down. I don't know if it's been a reprieve, or our numbers gone down. And can you say what the R number in Birmingham is at this point?
So the numbers have the numbers in Birmingham, they fluctuate from week to week. And what it is, we're in infection space, I would say, more so when we talk about the numbers going up. But they're not to the point where we are seeing hospital admissions. So you're finding it's the younger cohort that may be having the infection, but they're not getting it in the sense of where it's putting them into hospital. Whereas before it was more the older age range, or those with health conditions, and it was affecting them more. So that does have a significant impact. When you look across the city, there are particular areas where you are seeing more people, with infection rate increasing. And I think for our community, as a Black community, I think sometimes some people don't take COVID seriously. They don't think it exists. And we have a tendency to, when we greet each other, we're always hugging, we're very tactile people. We come from large families, so we tend to, when we group, so it is impacting us and other ethnic communities as well, particularly the Muslim community. So we are starting to put restrictions back into place, but we don't want to, we're on the amber watch, which means that the government are assisting us at the moment. We're not on their lockdown list, but they have given us more powers, which means that where there are sort of banqueting suites and restaurants that are flouting the rules and having more people in than they should and not actually social distancing, the council do now have the powers to go and shut it down.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah.
So that's been quite difficult. On the homelessness side, though, I think we've been quite. I think that the way that the whole service and the community groups and the commission services, they all worked very quickly in the beginning stages when it came to COVID. So we wanted to get into that prevention space, and we're quite fortunate that we haven't had many infections when it comes to those who were homeless. I think we only had 2 infections. So I think that's pretty good considering we've got people in temporary accommodation and everything else. I think the staff have gone over and above in pulling things together, and it hasn't been easy because people are trying to protect themselves at the same time. So in our cemeteries as well, we've had staff that have been spat at, they've been swore at. It's been very difficult whilst trying to deliver services and look after themselves and their families.
Councillor, how did you, as a local authority, and you being the lead, manage to get so many homeless people off the street during, I'm going to say to you, from March the 23rd to last month, or it's still not so bad now, but from what I hear, things are coming, push is coming to shove soon. So what are we going to do? Because I didn't think it was possible for the streets to be cleared of people, sleeping in, women as well, out there, and I thought, how come they just in one fell swoop? And I'm not bringing any colors in it. I'm not, no blue, no red. I'm just asking how it was actually done and can it be sustained?
First of all, I'll say testament to the staff and to our commission services who everybody went over and above, and it was all hands on deck, and there was a strategy put into place very quickly. But what I will go back to, and this is what I think is really important and a lesson for us all in the community, is around political willingness. So since 2010 to 2017, rough sleeping across the country had risen by 167%, 167%. That's staggering, eye-watering. And the government made a pledge to reduce that. And by 2019, it had gone down to where it was still at the point of 141% above 2010. Now, they decided to put more finances into it. They decided to be a bit more flexible on things, which meant we got slightly more resources, but nowhere near the amount of resources that we needed. And there were a number of things that politically we've lobbied for when it came to raising the housing living allowance, support around those with no access to public funds. There's a whole range of things that they always said to us that they couldn't do. But when COVID hit and they wanted to get people off the streets, they found a way to do. So they relaxed the policies around people with no recourse to public funds. They gave a direction that everybody needed to be in one weekend. We were quite fortunate in Birmingham in one weekend. And we managed to get over 50 rough sleepers off the streets in one weekend. And in Birmingham, we've been working on a prevention strategy for a very long time. And it's very difficult trying to put prevention in whilst dealing with crisis. But so I think we started to have the infrastructure in place, but we didn't always have the resources to do some of the stuff that we wanted to do. So when we got funding from the government and this clear direction, it made it easier for us to be able to do that. But what I always keep saying to people is what we've seen through COVID and homelessness is not the homelessness crisis as a consequence of COVID-19. What we've seen is the government wanting to prevent people from getting the infection. So we was able to use hotels that we weren't able to use before, and we was able to use the funding to do that. Hotels that normally would have their normal clients in there. But in Birmingham, we were also very clear that whilst we had them engaged, because it was the most hard to reach rough sleepers, the ones that normally wouldn't come in. And what happened was Birmingham's a very giving city, so people would feed people all the time. But because people were at home and nobody was out to buy you a sandwich or give you money, that tap turned off. So though your only means of support was actually through the services, so people were a bit more willing to engage.
Yeah.
So we managed to get so many through, and we also made this conscious effort that whilst they were indoors, we would try and get them settled there and then. So we reunited some with their own family members that they hadn't been in contact with before, so some have gone back to family. Some were given permanent accommodation, and that we reached out to housing associations and also the council. And some of them were properties that were probably a little bit harder for us to let previously, but you know, we managed to get these tenancies. And some went into supported housing across the city. So that was quite helpful in that regard. But I also have to make the point that whilst the government said everybody in, the government put forward I think it was £3.2 million for the whole country. Birmingham has spent £3.4 million on homelessness just as a local authority. So we've probably spent more than what the government did on their everybody in policy. So it's going to be incredibly difficult coming down the track. If the government do not get into a prevention space, we are going to see a new cohort of homeless people in a way that we haven't seen for a very long time. So especially those who are renters that have been struggling to pay their rent. So whilst they might have had an eviction ban, which is fine, rents are still clocking up. And a lot of our landlords out there are small landlords and not big estate landlords. Some of them have got 1 or 2 properties and can't afford to let that go down. So I think there's a whole range of things. Birmingham worked very quickly. Like I said, we had some of the infrastructure in place. Our partners stepped up to the table. But we also have over 70 people that has no recourse to public funds that we have been able to house because the government said so. But when we come out of the pandemic and they tell us that we can't do that anymore, that's another 70 people that, you know, they may end up back on the street or back in the accommodation that they were in, because we've seen evidence of human trafficking and all kinds of things going on. So it's not easy. And like I said, it's a testament to the staff at the council to work through some extreme circumstances.
I can see that. I mean, and I'm sure if you go into the Tory living room, at the back of the sofa, there's enough monies to actually do it.
I'm amazed at the amount of money that's come out the back of the sofa at 10 Downing Street, believe you me. But it is going to push us into a massive recession at the same time. And it hasn't been very organised in the way that they did it. I think at the beginning they were just throwing money out and forgetting that there was an end at the bottom of the pot.
I hear that Jeremy's having a party every Saturday.
You hear that?
I hear that Jeremy Corbyn is having a party every Saturday because he never thought he'd live to see the day when blue turned red. Well, the way they're doling out monies.
Well, they are doling out money, but I think it's also a lesson learned. I think it's a lesson learned. I think that what we've seen, the reason why they've had to spend so much money responding to COVID is because all the resilience has been stripped out of the country over the last 10 years, whether it's the NHS, whether it's the local authorities. So we've seen a lot of that. But like I said, we're in for a very tough time economically. And I think this is probably why it's more important for the Black community to start talking about Black economics and how we manage to arrange ourselves as a community, look at our resilience and remodel how we're doing some of the things that we're doing. We've seen with what's happened in America, has opened up a brand new conversation, and people are more willing to listen to us and more willing to accept change.
Absolutely. It'd be great. I mean, the thing is, they're listening now, Councillor, but what a day will it be when they start to hear. That the magic, be magic. Because remember, you can listen to an open space, but when you start to hear some things, I think, well, and then you, as you know, that we all know that once America is experiencing something, it's just a matter of time before it comes in. And it's here, but I mean, America is more overt than, you know, here. We deal in subtlety over here.
It is, and I think it is, and I think that's why I think it's so important that we start to position ourselves in a very different way. Representation absolutely matters. That's at a local level, a regional level, and a national level, and operationally. There's too much gaps where we're not seeing. I mean, we talk about what's happening at the moment, especially what's happened in America, and we often hear people talk about, you know, as soon as we talk about racism and discrimination and not being able to get further, the first thing to start talking about is, well, let's have apprenticeships, let's have leadership, or you know, programs, which are all good, but they're what I call activity. Because the reality of it is, I know a lot of people who work at different levels, who work excellently, probably better than their line managers in some cases, but they hit a glass ceiling. And what we need to actually work on is dismantling the glass ceilings in the system. And that will only come is if we start looking at systemic change. But we need to make sure we're all in the right rooms to implement systemic change in the first place.
That is so true. That is so, so true. I mean, you preempted what I was going to say, actually, because it's how do we improve the Black UK economy? And you've covered it. And how does politics affect this, you know? So you've covered that. There was a question I was going to ask. I was going to ask you about the Black Lives Matters. No, and I would like to know what is more important, statues or statutes?
Okay, so
because you see, I mean, I don't know how much you know about Black Lives Matters. I'm quite in the dark about the structure and so many things about Black Lives Matters, because I'd like to know if it's just a group of people that have a drink on a Saturday night and decide, so, well, you know, next week Saturday we're going to march down the Mall, down Tower Bridge, and what I don't know, because I'm at a loss. I think from what I see on the surface, it's a great thing because numbers is very important. Every kind of people across the world is doing it. But what is the exit strategy? Maybe you've been told something I don't know.
No, I think Black Lives Matters is definitely a movement, and it's stretched in America. But I think sometimes we need to also appreciate that whilst we have similarities as those in America, sometimes our challenges over here are slightly different. Some people are very pro Black Lives Matter, some people aren't. But I think for me, the key thing is that it's opened up a wider conversation around discrimination on different platforms, whether that's to do with business, education, housing, you know, the local authority, the whole range, as well as criminal justice. America's was pretty much around the criminal justice movement. I think you talked about statues, and people keep saying to me, you know, do you think we should pull down statues? And I'm a little bit like, well, whilst I understand it's important to some people, and I get that, and I'm kind of staggered at the amount of statues that we have that are inappropriate across the country. Personally, it's not something I'm prepared to die in a ditch over. I'm prepared to die in a ditch over not trying to address inequalities, injustice with it, and discrimination. And that's the structural stuff. And I think we have to be careful sometimes that we don't get sidetracked. And actually the answer for us is, well, we brought down your statues, so you should all be happy now. Statues coming down is not going to help my son in his education. It's not going to help him grow a business. It's not going to help my grandkids get a job when I do get grandkids. It's not going to reduce the inequalities in the housing market or anything else. Those are the things that we really need to be focusing on and not getting sidetracked. So I think that's where my energy is more pushed towards. You know, like I said, I've got a big portfolio. It's not perfect. And I can see where the inequalities are within the council, and it's also the council getting its house in order as well. So I think we should be really more focused on the structural than the statue.
I agree with 100%. I find that that many communities who are successful and sustain themselves in this country, they have they look at the situation quite militaristically. And what I mean by that, command and control. We don't seem to have command and control at all, in as much as our electronic media, you know, that we can tell our story and get our young children them to aspire to some of the living legends that we have, you know, and also the press, like the paper press. I find that the one that we have, to correct me if I'm wrong, the only one I know is The Voice, and that tends to be very London-centric. Doesn't seem to do very much in the provinces or outside London. You know, so I look at the situation with different ethnic groups that come to this country, and that's solid command and control, I call it. And the people go per and they prosper more than we do.
I think it's partly to do with the fact that many groups or ethnicity groups, a lot of them are based around a faith. They've got a really strong faith basis. If you go to like the Sikhs, the temple, the Muslims, the mosques, no matter where you are, whether you like a scholar or whether you've had a bit of a shaded background, you still find yourself back into the temple or the mosque. And there's a level of respect for those different structures. I think within the African Caribbean community, whilst we do have the church, not everybody is affiliated with the church, so we start to have fractures. We need to become more strategic in our movements. And I always say that actually it's a bit like if we was on a chessboard with the system and they're on one side and the community was on another, what moves do we need to take to get to where we need to get to? So I think we need to be looking at the media is a big thing. Yes, we have got The Voice. Yes, we have got the Phoenix paper as well. But we also need to be getting people within the mainstream of those systems, because the only way you're going to dismantle disparities is if you've got people in there disrupting and also putting forward a correct narrative. At the moment, the press seem to they manage our narrative in a way that we don't particularly want them to all the time. So we need to get people within different systems at different levels. And it's the same with local authorities, and it's the same with businesses. I think we have to really connect policy to everything that we're doing in order to get to sustainability. And I think that's always the difficult job, but it's something that we do need to look at. And we need to be really organised, like a military operation, to be quite honest with you. We really need to position ourselves in the right spaces, and also having our spokespeople within the community. So not the same people speaking on everything, because when they hit that difficult question, when you get into a meeting with someone like me, you don't know the technicals of that area. We want to have people with specialist backgrounds speaking on different areas. So I think that makes a difference as well.
Absolutely. Cut out the emotional. Cut out the emotion.
There's a bit of that as well. Sometimes it's good to have passion.
That's so true, because we put the emotions at the front, but you have to have the ones who can articulate everything that comes very closely behind them. You know.
Yeah, don't let the emotions overcloud the judgment.
No, and we're good at that, and we have to unlearn so many things. Councillor, it's great talking to you, but then again, I'd like to know a little bit more, and I'm sure the audience would like to learn more about your involvement in the Black Pound Day, because you seem so passionate about the Black Pound Day.
I am.
Tell us a little bit about where you went today as well.
So today I was at the Legacy Centre of Excellence, and Swiss, who is the founder of Black Pound Day, he was there as well, because it was Black Pound Day market, the first Black Pound Day market in Birmingham that will happen there at the centre on the first Saturday of every month with Black Pound Day. I was also able to open the Eloquent Arts Centre today, which is another centre that we've got that's opening up, and there's also a Black Gallery opening up in the city centre. So our asset lock within the community, within the wider Birmingham.
Applause for that.
Yeah, our asset lock in the wider community is absolutely growing, and it's really excellently managed.
That is great.
Black Pound Day, I saw it in June as everybody else did, and I wanted to reach out to them, so I did. And my task in my head was to convince the council to jump on board with it, which a few people told me I wouldn't be able to do. But in the end, we actually got the endorsement of Birmingham City Council, the Chamber of Commerce also endorsed it, and also across the West Midlands. So we're hoping that if they don't treat it as just an equalities thing, that we've just endorsed it, but they actually have more involvement with it as well. And it really is about highlighting Black businesses online and in person. And it does work, because actually last month I made that concerted effort on Black Pound Day to buy from trades that I'd never heard of before. So I bought a hoodie from someone in London, I had a face pack from someone somewhere else. And it is about that exposure and the fact that, you know, the spending power of the Black community is in its billions.
Massive.
But we don't always retain that within the community. And also
6.2
showing other
billion in this country. 6.2 billion in this country.
And also reaching out to other communities and showing people what we do. We are a resilient, focused. When we're focused, we are really focused as a community, and we can do so much brilliant things. So we just need a mechanism to market. I think sometimes with a lot of Black businesses, because it's usually the smaller businesses, the ability to market on such a wide range screen isn't always there. And we know that Black businesses are less likely to be able to get a loan. There's a whole range of things. So this is really about giving it the exposure and encouraging other communities to spend with Black businesses. And actually, Black Business Day should just become a way of life.
Absolutely,
Everybody.
absolutely. So Councillor, can I then say that you are an advocate of diversification when it comes to our Black businesses? Because we do have a preponderance of our GDP in our communities, mainly around here, and food. Now, we need to, because we did a survey, and people looking for dentists, for this, for that, and all the others that, hence the reason why I say our pound tends to commit economic adultery, not because the need is there, but it's not in our household. So it goes abroad and goes and sleep with this community, that community, and the other community. I mean, so we have to try, well, we're trying to encourage that anyway. And real wealth creation, as we see it, is when you can provide goods and services for every kind of people to patronize. And I'm sure with the connection of Black Pound Network, that's got to be part of your what you know
absolutely.
whatever the best word is.
Yeah, no, it is, and I'm very passionate about it. And I'm very passionate about, you know, I'm a politician, and I don't see politics as a job for life. I really don't see it as that, and it's not meant to. I feel like I'm here for a purpose, to serve the community. It's not easy, it's difficult. But whilst I'm in this space, I want to be able to create leverage for other people and to create opportunities. So in housing, I try to get this concept into everybody that we need experts by experience. So that's people with lived experience. And one of the things that I did most recently was I had a meeting with the Black Landlords Forum. And that was actually looking at how do we then connect them to the council, because actually the majority of the housing rental market is in the private rented sector. We have a huge amount of people that are facing homelessness, and we've got a huge amount of landlords with good integrity within our community. So how do you create leverage? So I think it's about making those kinds of links as well. And when it comes to businesses, is breaking down this conception that our businesses are just around music, that it's just all, you know, there's so many different things that we're involved with in a cultural level.
But what do you do outside politics, Sharon?
Don't sleep. So aside from politics, I have a number of groups within the community, within the Black community, organisations. There's about 3 or 4 that I'll give an hour to every single month. So we can have strategic conversations, and I can signpost them and I can introduce them to people. So that helps, and I have a number of individuals that I do with that as well. So it's almost like a mentoring role. I have a group that Ashley, Bertie and myself set up, which we call #Let's Network, which is young people, just younger than me, that we get together with once a month, and we introduce them to people in positions of influence and power. We have a Nando's with them, and they get to speak to them and ask them questions that they wouldn't normally have contact with. So like the chief executive of the combined authority, or you know, the leader of the council isn't someone they would automatically be able to reach. I do have a business myself. So I have a business which is called Tilt 360. And Tilt 360 is around leadership development and also challenging inequalities within the workspaces. So it's actually about going into organisations and doing almost an audit of where they're at, and finding the mechanism to create solutions and training opportunities as well.
Okay. That's why you're so busy with that extra, what you call it, portfolio plus. But then, yeah, politics is a lifespan to it. So obviously, you have to sort your life out. I mean, is there any questions for the good councillor? Any questions?
I'm better with questions. Have you got any questions for me?
Any questions?
I am actually amazed, Sharon.
Yeah.
For
She's done. She's done. She's done. The girl's done good.
Carol remembers, my son's 21 now, but Carol remembers when my son was in a buggy and I was coming to church with him. So,
and to see the woman that you've turned out to be, my goodness, a force
Thank
to be
you.
reckoned with.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. You have to become a surrogate of plenty people. Plenty people. You have to become a surrogate mother too. Come on, Marcia.
Just a question going around homelessness, because I heard the point with, you know, once COVID is over, or once they've when the funds run out, there's all the, you know, those homeless people who've not been able to find alternative accommodation, or choose not to want to stay in accommodation. What's the government thinking about helping them? I just wonder, because I help out, as some of you know, at a food bank, and we feed the homeless on a Saturday with an organisation called Bless to Bless. And over the COVID, you know, we've seen an increase in them actually coming for meals and breakfast and lunch. They used to actually invite them in and they'd sit and have breakfast and lunch, but obviously it's all changed now. But the numbers has increased, and even when they were off the street, you know, that weekend where they were all off the streets, and for that period of time, the numbers that were coming for meals and such really increased. And now I don't know how true it is, but I'm told that they've all been asked to leave the hotels, so there's more back on the streets. And I just wonder what happens, what will happen. Will the government just sort of just dismiss them when things come back to whatever is the new normal? And what will the future be for them? I don't know. I suppose it's just a question. Yeah. What's your thoughts on that?
So with that, I kind of have mixed views, because I know that I've gone out and outreach over COVID, and I get the figures come through quite regularly. And at one point we was down to single figures when it came to rough sleeping. And that was pretty much the group that were just anti, we don't want nothing to do with, you know, that wouldn't accept. The hotel space that we had, we decommissioned it at the 15th of June. And all of those people were housed. There was one or two that went onto the streets because they chose. It was more that they weren't ready to go into long term. One of the things that we have had a meeting with some of the community groups, but one of the things that I'm really keen to explore is about the people that are being fed, because I am of the view, and it's not scientific and it might be wrong, but I am of the view that many of the organisations that are feeding people on the, you know, the daytime and nighttime feeds, I actually think a lot of those people are preventing homelessness rather than actually than them feeding the rough sleepers. I think some of the people that are being fed are in accommodation but cannot afford to feed themselves. And actually what we're dealing with is food poverty. So I don't necessarily think all of the people that are being fed are rough sleepers. I think they are people that are very vulnerable, and actually you're stopping people from falling into a different net. So I'm really curious to start digging a little bit further to actually looking at who are the people that are being fed on the streets, because our numbers are telling us that we've got a lot of them in. So if we've got them in, I can't understand why the numbers fluctuating. In terms of the government, I've met with Louise Casey, who was, you know, she's just resigned as the government czar on homelessness, because she couldn't really figure out with what they were doing. They don't really listen to the grassroots, so they don't listen enough. So we've been working with Crisis and Shelter and a number of other national charities, trying to provide the data. Birmingham, alongside the rest of the region, because I chair a group with other cabinet members across the region, throughout pandemic, we put together a positioning document, which was the live data of what was happening with rough sleeping and homelessness, but also a cute list of what the government needed to do. So it was, yes, you need to have a ban on evictions, but you also need to provide a fund for people who have been financially affected by COVID. So how are you helping them with their rent? Because the debt's the debt, it's still there. So you know what, Marcia, I'm at a loss at where the government really are sitting with this. We speak to them all the time. I say to them, my biggest concern at the moment is domestic abuse. They're not really giving us much for that. My other concern is, what are we supposed to do with all these people that have been, no recourse to public funds, and they just keep saying, we want you to support them legally, but they've got no access to public funds. So what does that actually mean? So they're not really talking straight, in all honesty. All we can do is continue to lobby them. But I think the community groups that are out there, like yourself, the community groups need to lobby the government as well. So it's coming from all directions. So it's not just me as a cabinet member and politicians and big charities. You guys are seeing people on the day-to-day every single day. So in short, I don't know what the government are doing, because they're not giving me any clarity. They're telling us to make sure we keep people in, but they're not funding us properly to do it. There's a huge housing crisis anyway. So you get people in temporary accommodation, there's nowhere for them to go after. So there's no proper move on. So, and we're doing what we can, but all we can do is continue to lobby them, because they're not giving us I don't think they know what they're doing, because they don't come on the ground enough to see the reality.
There is an Armageddon on its way, because when according to the government, if things remain the same, there's no upsurge in the pandemic, come the 1st of October is when hospitality is to come back on stream, maximum or name maximum capacity. And as you were saying, Councillor, it's quite a number of people that's been scraped up off the street, or domestic abuse, people that had to leave their homes and stuff like that, or in hotels and places like that. So it seems to me that the end of the world is nigh, because what are they going to be doing when October comes? Because this government, and maybe many other governments, I don't know what my party would be like if when they, but what comes first, public health or the economics? I mean, there's a juggling going on, and the government that we have at this point in time, I just think they're so inexperienced. They're all like the theory people. Is there any need for the 11th hour U-turns that we're seeing?
They should have listened in the first place. I think this is why we've got celebrities speaking up, because they've had enough and like, what are you talking? We need to get things done. So they should have been listening in the first place. I think that there's a lot of errors. I mean, the Home Office they commissioned a hotel and just placed the refugees in different areas across the country. We've seen Britain First and the right wing turning up at those spaces. I keep arguing that they need to do more in the exempt accommodation market in terms of the regulations and making sure that market's steady, because a lot of supported housing is a big thing at the moment. There's a whole host of things, but I think they're lost, to be honest with you.
Most definitely, because and what's on top of that is this Brexit nonsense malarkey as well. There's so many things. With what I was reading in the Guardian today was that 270,000 people maybe lose their homes. A winter of discontent. Never mind 1978 with Callahan. This will be the winter of discontent.
I think Brexit frightens me, because I've got this horrible feeling we're going to crash out without any form of deal. So that frightens me anyway. The word recovery in economic terms, I'm fine with. The word recovery when it comes to things like housing and homelessness, I'm not into, because I keep saying with homelessness, when you recover, it's about going back to something or going back to where you was. Where we wasn't a good place in the first place. We had an increase of 167% in rough sleepers. Why would we want to go back there? This is an opportunity for us to look across the board in different areas and actually rethink and remodel how we do things. I talk about the high streets and the city centre. Many people are going to be working from home as a long-term thing now. The high streets are going to go down. Why can't we start rethinking those spaces, living spaces? You know, really think about the space that we've got. So I think there's a lot of scope for innovation. We just need innovative leaders.
So what you're basically saying, Councillor, is Boris Johnson's oven-ready thing is more or less half-baked.
Completely. I just, honestly, he didn't even turn up for his meetings half of the time. So I'm like, I'm not going to bash the Tories, but I just think that we need to. I think we need to. They need to get a reality check.
We are very fair people. We are British after all, aren't we?
Absolutely.
Sharon,
So, any more questions? Yeah.
You mentioned you're more comfortable with the economic aspect than the homelessness aspect.
In terms of the word recovery, yes.
Right, okay. Yeah. Because, what do you think the trend would be in, say, 5 years' time, given where we are now and the unemployment, which is, it's going to happen because of people losing their jobs after furlough, businesses going to the wall. I mean, for me, it's a horrifying thought.
Yeah.
People are in a position now that they never ever dreamt they could have been, and looming.
I think it frightens me because I think the skills, particularly the jobs and the businesses that have the likelihood of many that we will lose along the way. But I also think that it is a time for innovation, and actually those that are prepared to unlearn, relearn and think about doing things differently, they will, some of them will survive, but they will be remodeling and doing things in a very different way. So you're finding a lot of businesses that struggled, that would have just gone under completely, have used technology in different ways to change, or they brought new products on board. I think it's also a time when we start to think about, COVID's made me think about my finances in a very different way, because you realise actually we're very service-led and not asset-led and product-led. And I think that people will start to look in that avenue as well. There's no question about it. We are going to go into a very tough recession. We know that. And I think that Brexit isn't, I don't know where they're going to get all these deals from, but Brexit's going to be, we're going to crash out badly. And I think it's the younger generation that I feel sorry for, because we're already in a state where majority of young children, my son's age, my son's 21, and even for his generation and the ones that go down after him, buying a house is that's like a dream. It's like a house. You'd never be able to afford to do that. You won't be able to afford to live in London and places like that. As we start to see things change in Birmingham, HS2 come in, Commonwealth Games, that's going to increase value on things. So we're going to be in a very difficult situation. So I think that, the government clearly got a huge part to play in this. I think they need to be more smart about how they spend their money. But I think us as communities and particularly with the economy, I always say that the Black community is, we're better consumers than we are producers sometimes.
All the time.
We need to become better producers than we are consumers.
Yeah. And many
Answer your question, Carol.
More than more. Yeah. That's it. Any more questions to the councillor? Any more questions? But yeah, well, we have to invest in each other now. From what's come out from this fireside chat, it's a fireside chat we've just had. We need to invest in ourselves. We need to unlearn and read this and read and be innovative. Necessity is the mother of invention. And also, we have to create opportunities out of adversity, because our whole heap of adversities around the corner and go. We don't know how long this is going to be. You know, we just don't know. And remember, this pigmentation here always suffers the most. There's no shadow of a doubt about that, because we have had long enough, it's happening slowly but surely, to create an infrastructure for ourselves within the larger infrastructure. Because we can't get away with nothing. I can say, my name is Brum, but when we go in a town, this in the eyes of the man fails me. A Polish man can say he's John Thomas and what have you. His pigmentation gets him through the door and gets him the loan, gets him that and gets everything. So we have to.
And Bill, I think we need to better connect with the Caribbean and with parts of Africa more. Because actually, if you look at other communities that do a lot around in terms of trade, our trading power is very strong. And I think so when, as we're thinking of, you know, we think of the UK economy, we also need to think of the wider African Caribbean community, you know, and the economy there. So I think we need to do more in terms of thinking around how we trade and what our trading power is as well.
I agree, because Britain is going to go back to the Caribbean through Brexit and what have you. The people that are kicked in the teeth and Windrush and all sorts of something, the chickens are going to come home to roost. They've got to disbanded Europe. So there's a Caribbean out there who look what they did to us. They're going to come back, and we're still, many of us are still going to, or leaders are going to just capitulate, just give them as before.
And I think someone put a question up about what do we do to, what strategies can we use to become more producers? And I always say that as a community, we're not very discreet sometimes in the way that we operate as a community. So I think that what we need to do once COVID's over and done with, I think we need to get into the space where we're actually in a room together and actually doing some kind of workshops and looking at what are the best strategies, and also looking at other communities and how they've done things and their journey and what actually can we emulate from some of that. Because sometimes it's not about reinventing the wheel. I think we need to get groups of people that have got that strategy mindset from different experiences and different areas across the community to literally come together and actually, what is our vision for ourselves and our community? What is the big ticket? How many buildings do we want to have in Birmingham? You know, what are the businesses supposed to look like? And actually start to work backwards on the steps that we need to take and build a number of principles together.
That's so true. So true. And keep things, and mum's the word, because we chat too much. Tell everybody else what we're going to do, and then what everybody else does, they capitalize it, and they make the economics out of it. We give the idea, because we never short of ideas, but the other man makes economics out of it.
That's why I said we need to get in a proper room.
Yeah. Secure the room.
Do we, there's any plan for Black people to get contract in doing business?
In terms of the council?
Yes, and yeah.
Okay, so one of the things that I've found is, because I get to sit on a lot of panels and things like that, and I think one of the things that I think there's two sides to this. One is about making sure that we know where the contracts are and how you apply for them. So I say to people, we need to be signed up to different mailing lists to when the opportunities come up, that we know that they're there, because it's not that they're not there, it's just that we don't always access them because, you know, we're not aware of them. So one is around about the accessibility. I think the other side of it is making sure that we're ready for them, and making sure that our businesses and stuff are fit for purpose in order to meet some of the criteria, because that often is where we get some of the downfall. So I think that we need to be working with different businesses, and it's good that we've got the Commonwealth Chamber of Commerce as well, and I don't know how many people are involved in that, but I know that there's the course that Joel and Jamila are working on at the moment, which is the, what's it called? There is a course that people can sign up to if they're a business, which helps you to get fit for purpose around that stuff. And it's on the second cohort, I think, coming up. And that's around the Commonwealth. So I think it's about making sure that this group is plugged into where all those opportunities are. Because it's not that they're not out there, it's just that we don't hear about them, or we're not agile enough to take them up.
Carol?
Oh.
Carol, sir. Carol.
Carry on, Lloyd.
Yeah. How do we get to contact you?
I'm in the WhatsApp group, believe it or not. So I am in the WhatsApp group. You can email me, so I'll get Bill to send out the email address.
Yeah.
You know, my doors, Marcia and Bill have both got my number as well, so I'm happy to have a meeting with you both, or with a group, just to kind of plot out what it is, how I could help you, and what you need to do, or how we can make it more and doable and work together. Because as far as I'm concerned, it's a jigsaw puzzle. We're all a part of a jigsaw puzzle. We've all got a part to play. You know, my part might be, council wise, might be seen as important, but you know, the community, we're all part of that jigsaw puzzle, and we've got to be quite agile. So I'm contactable. I will put my email address in the chat.
Yeah, we'll get that to you.
Oh, another question.
Question coming up.
How do we get involved? How do we get involved in the Commonwealth? Your support will be very helpful.
Is that a Commonwealth
Games, or
chamber? I think
the Commonwealth Chamber of Commerce.
Must be that.
Okay, so the Commonwealth Chamber of Commerce, Jamila Davis is the person that I usually speak to. She's absolutely phenomenal, and I think the program that her and Joel are running as well, what I can do is I can get contact details, and I will post in the WhatsApp group about the program that they're advertising for at the moment for businesses to sign up with. They're linked into things like the LET, which is also very helpful, because that's where the enterprise hubs take place.
Yeah.
And we need more people around those tables. In terms of the Commonwealth Games, there are, believe it or not, there's a number of jobs that have come up recently for the Commonwealth Games. We need to make sure we're on those mailing lists, and with that, you know, my target is always we need at least 3 people to be applying for them. So we need to do that. There's going to be more happening around the Commonwealth Games. I'm particularly interested in the Commonwealth Games Federation, because if you think past the games, there's a number of each of the Caribbean islands, they have a representative attached to the Commonwealth Games Federation, which I think that's what we need to tap into. And I think that we need to be putting a group together to really be championing, and actually the work with the Chamber of Commerce, which is quite helpful, is saying to them that when the games actually come, that we want a number of trade events for the Caribbean communities, so that we can link the people together. So I think there's different ways that we can start to engage. It is a little bit drip feed at the moment with the Commonwealth Games, because there's so much going on. But what I would do is I'll make the commitment to make sure that I keep you guys up to date.
Brilliant.
And any opportunities, I'll make sure that they're posted.
Appreciate that.
And oh, sorry.
No, Karen. No, I was mumbling.
Just a resource, really. I used to go to lots of networking meetings before COVID, and attended ones run by NatWest, and they do offer a lot of funding for businesses looking to set up small businesses. So
it's important, I think, just before you come into it, Chair, because I had a call from the Alex Sharma's office, business and enterprise and what have you. And what the guy said to me is that they find that the take up when it comes to the bounce back and other incentives that they were giving, you know, the amount of black businesses were pretty minuscule. And they did some research, and it was that many of the black businesses weren't registered with HMRC. So that really scuppered everything. And what Jamila and Lloyd Sunday is doing, and ourselves as well, we have to make sure that these, because this is not the end of it, you know, this is going to go on for a long, long time, that the businesses are not just a business, but they're registered, they go through the due diligence, what is supposed to happen for them to be effective. And if anything happens untoward, they can claim, they can get assistance from the government. And that's what they came back and said to me, that they'd like us and other community groups to catch hold of businesses that are actually active at this point in time, but not registered, and also any of a new startup to get that, to position themselves in that. Because if they don't, then when things come again, or anything untoward happens, or any changes, they're going to be the ones that suffer. And the man was even saying that that a lot of black businesses who are registered are calling the race card. But there is one thing, especially in this system here, you cannot live outside conventions, and that has to be made really categorically clear to people that nobody, you have to get a good accountant to look after you, and the rest will be history. I'm not going to tell people what to do, but you need a good financial advisor. But you must follow convention. You must live within, or else you're going to become a cropper, And that's, yeah.
I think in the current climate that we're in at the moment, because of what's happening, not COVID, but actually because of what's happened with George Floyd and everything else, a lot of organisations and like funders, they're kind of falling over themselves at the moment because they're not quite sure how to connect with the black community, if we're completely honest. And I think what we need to do is just ask. Because at the end of the day, they need to reach the businesses. They need to reach the community. They don't know how to. At the minute, a lot of them are scratching their heads. Step forward as a network and say to them, look, we're here. We've got a membership that is this size. We're giving you an open platform to come and speak to us. Why couldn't we just invite NatWest along and for them to share where the opportunities are, the Chamber of Commerce and all those kind of organisations. So I think as a network, it'd be really good to write down a kind of wish list of organisations that we want to connect with.
Yes.
Whether that's through funding, whether that's to give us leverage, to support businesses, community group, whatever it is we're thinking of, and actually just start going through. The worst they can say is no or not respond. But I think that's definitely something that's worth kind of pursuing.
I agree 100%. I agree. All right.
I was going to ask a question about how do we know who to approach, but that's a good point. Yeah, just write to the businesses and find out, because I know there's a lot of funding going, but sometimes you don't hear about the funding until maybe 3 or 4 days before the application is due in, and then it's a panic, and then if you don't know where who to approach. But yeah, like you said, they can only say no. Let's just go to the businesses and say what, because
the key people to look out for at the moment is their diversity officers. So if you know that they've got diversity engagement officers, that's the person that you usually want to go for, because their job is to go out there and find diverse communities. So I think that those are the ones. And feel free to just copy me into any emails, and if you don't get a response, you can just phone me for another response, and I'll just ask the question. We've not had a response to this. I don't mind, utilize me as leverage.
Okay. Well, you said something very.
I'll take you up on that.
Oh, we will. You said something very, very crucial when you were talking to Marcel, just about when there's confusion. I mean, I'm just going by what the white man does. The white man, he capitalizes in crisis. And it's something like that we should also effect as well. Because when there's confusion, there's crisis, and especially, as you say, whether they mean it or not, is diversity. Then we have to be, it comes back to the word strategic. We have to be strategic.
Absolutely. And the other thing, I think there's a question about black businesses, a list. This is the other thing, because at the Black Pound Day, they've got a directory and they're encouraging people to sign up to the directory. And I've been encouraging people because I know that Chamber of Commerce and places like that are looking at that directory, because that's where we're directing them as part of Black Pound Day. And then someone says to me, but such and such has got a directory and such has got a directory. So which one should we be going on? And I said, look, smart business people will be on every directory.
Absolutely.
McDonald's doesn't advertise in one space. you know, you would try and get as much leverage as much as possible.
It's because the
Try
old
and get
narrative of our
understanding.
thinking is.
Yeah, so it shouldn't be a case of, you know, getting territorial and this is my space or this is leadership. Or we need to kind of spread our wings.
You got to do it, but we're too insular to come. After I come out. Any questions? Timekeeper, how are we doing?
You're on mute, Carol.
You're on mute. You're on mute.
Yeah.
Where?
I was just typing something in the chat as well.
Okay.
Yeah, we've got unofficially up till 7:30 or officially up till 7:30, but you know, it's if you want to finish now.
It's entirely up to you guys. If you know, if you
have our soup already. She have our soup already. Because she's not hungry.
I've been to Legacy Centre and I've been fed.
Okay, that's all right. That's even better still. What was the foot flow like down there, Sharon? Because of social distancing.
It was very good. I think one of the good things about the Legacy Centre is its capacity. I mean, you know, I've spoken to Cypher quite a bit over that and the team, and they really did work with the council on you know, the size of the foot floor and the one direction and everything else. Yeah. So they did very well because they've got a high capacity range anyway. They was able to have quite a few people in. But actually what he did was they actually opened the whole building. So it literally was like a mall. It wasn't even like it was like a whole mall.
Absolutely. That's good. That's good. That's good.
Yeah, so it was really good. The footfall was very good, very strong.
Real. Excellent.
Sharon, a question. With the council, you know, there's a lot of talk or showing commitment about bringing diversity to the, you know, back into the council and, you know, in the senior leadership, and, you know, just making a conscious effort. I met with Chris Naylor a few weeks ago as part of the Black Workers Group, and was, you know, and he showed a lot of, he was saying all the right things, let's put it that way. And, you know, the cynical side of me is, I mean, I know with Chris Naylor, for those who don't know, he's the chief exec, current chief exec of Birmingham City Council. And the cynical side of me is that they talk the talk when those who don't want to see changes, they then get rid of them. And you know, I just wonder, what is the general feeling? Are they as committed as they appear to be? Or is this an unseen drive that is pushing them? Because suddenly, I mean, you know, we had an equalities team, and now we've just got one person. They're now talking of bringing back an equalities team. I don't know why they ever got rid of it in the first place. But then, is this a genuine drive that they have come together and say we need to do this, or are they being pushed from central government to say this needs to happen?
Not from central government. It's not been pushed from central government.
Not central.
I'd say it's genuine. I think Ian Ward's been the leader of the council since 2018, just actually before that, for that election.
Yeah.
And you know, this is the most diverse cabinet he's had that's been in the council, full stop. So it's 50% females. That's never happened before. You've got 30% are BAME or Black Asian minorities. 2 of us are Black. That's me and Paulette. That's never happened before. We are vocal. Yeah. And we do challenge things. So there is a genuine willingness. I have to say, John Cotton has been absolutely fantastic. Anything he listens and he gets it, which I think is really important. I don't think it's a tick box exercise, because I think some of us wouldn't really allow it or sign up for that. Chris Naylor's been very good, and I've had emails come through and they've been copied in from members of staff, and I'm like, you know, people are being honest about where they're at. There's a report that's going to Cabinet on Tuesday around equalities. So you probably would have heard that the Rooney rule's coming in, which is that you've got to have a Black Asian minority on any job application and a woman. Cabinet, we won't sit on panels where there's no all white and all male panels. We won't sit on anymore, and we've made that commitment. There's a race pay gap audit that will be done as well, which is very brave. You know, that's definitely a step in the right direction. We haven't had that before. So a lot of it is genuine, and I think the other genuine. Yeah, and I think the other important thing is about them not always going to the same. I have an issue with the you know, if they talk to the Black community or the Asian community, they go to the same people. And I have a little bit of an issue with some of that. Now they're speaking to more people and getting more views and staff views, the yammers and stuff. So it is making a difference. The conversations behind closed doors are, you know, they really are there. And some of the stuff John was already planning before the George Floyd happened. It's just that COVID-19 just really put a spanner in the works on a lot of things. So I do think it's genuine. I think the difficulty is I always say you can have the best policies in the world. It's just about making sure you got the right people to deliver them. So a lot of it is going to be around culture change. And one of the things that I'm quite vocal on is the fact that I think that when people raise issues of equalities, especially racial equality, even I find it myself, if you're working in an organisation, if your HR team, if your HR function isn't right, then that's where half of your problems were, because some people get vocal on Black issues and then all of a sudden they have HR problems and it's a performance issue when they never had performance issues before. So there's a whole range of things, and also the understanding of people really understanding what unconscious bias really is. So I keep making the example of, well, okay then, councillors cannot get involved in HR issues. So person A, they may have, issues around performance, but person B down the road has had issues around performance. Everybody knows about it. It's borderline a joke. They've never had a conversation with the line manager. There's nothing on their record, but yet person A has had to go through this and has fallen out some black hole that enters you out of the exit of the organisation. So I think it's about being really clear about what that looks like. And another thing that some of us have been speaking up on that often gets forgotten is intersectionality. So for instance, if you talk about gender, and then Marcia, you talk about gender and gender's a big thing, but actually there's a big difference between a white woman and a Black woman and how we're treated and some of the things that we go through. So we're also talking about those things as well. So it is genuine, but I think to get this stuff done right, it takes a lot of time. It's not an overnight thing. If it happens too quickly, it's an issue for me. It does take time and you have to do it right. But I'm quite fortunate because I used to work for the council for nearly a decade. I still know a lot of people who work in the council. So my ears are usually near the ground. So I'm usually pointed in the right direction and where to ask the right questions that we don't always know exist when you're in the political space, because you're not so close to the workforce.
It's encouraging to hear that it's genuine, because there's a cynical side of us that's saying, okay, we're having the meetings, we're having the talks, we're seeing Councillor Ward, supporting Black Pound Day and just initiatives that's happening, and we're just wondering, I hope this is not just like a short term, we're doing something and then suddenly there's a new agenda. So
I think that's the importance of having Black representation, because you've got myself there, Paulette there, Wasim there around the EMT table. We can challenge things. So when people say things like, I'll be quite honest, when people say, okay then, so we need to have a leaders scheme to build the next generation of leaders within the council that are Black, Asian minorities. I say, yeah, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that, but it's not the only answer because of structural problems. The reality of it is people in jobs that have been doing perfectly fine, and the only reason why they're not higher is because they hit the glass ceiling. We need to remove the glass ceiling, otherwise the new leaders you're creating are going to bang their head anyway, so it's not going to make a difference. So I think you've got people that are being quite vocal in those areas. And actually, Bristol is an amazing place to look at because they've got Asha Craig is the most authentic black woman in politics, I keep saying. And Marvin Rees is Marvin Rees is the first black elected mayor in the country, if not in Europe. And they've really taken on the task when it comes to some of this stuff. So now we have got good examples across the country that we can sort of reach to and look at as well. So it's genuine. The willingness is genuine. It's just about making sure that the different spaces of layers are listening as well.
What we mustn't do, we mustn't mistake movement for action. We must be on the ball because these people are very, very strategic and very well finely tuned in. They will make a little bit of a movement, and then someone we jump up and say, "Lord Jesus, we're good now, we're good now." But that's just movement. It is not action. So we have to be on top of the situation.
So wonderful. Brilliant.
How are we now? Timekeeper.
Yes, there was one last question from Sandra about black disabled.
Okay.
How many?
How many black disabled people are included? Is that in the, Sandra, is that in the context of the work that's being done at the council, or?
I've unmuted you, Sandra.
Oh, thank you. In terms of the representation, I think I've not heard about black people with disabilities being a part of, say, the Commonwealth Games or anything else for that matter. So I don't know. I know yourself and Paulette are councillors, yes?
Yeah, on the cabinet, yes.
On the cabinet. I'd just like to know how many black disabled people are actually involved.
In the Commonwealth Games or in the council?
In the council itself.
Councillors.
So in terms of councillors, I'm not quite sure, if I'm completely honest, because it's quite interesting. Anything to do with protected characteristics, it's about who discloses. You know, so that I think that's the other side of it. And I think separately, when it comes to councillors, political parties have their part to play in making sure that representation is representation. It comes from a wider pool, and that when we talk about representation, we don't just mean gender and we don't just mean ethnicity. So for me, I think there's a lot of work to be done when it comes to disability. Absolutely, even in the workforce, let alone anywhere else. But it is something that we are talking about, because that's why I'm very keen on the whole thing around intersectionality, because, some of us identify with different communities and we have different multiple needs that come from that. So I can try and find out for you. In terms of the Commonwealth Games, I'm not 100% sure because I'm not that close to the Commonwealth Games at the moment, but I will be in the future. So I can actually specifically ask for that. Or if you can drop me an email, that'd be even better, because you give me a reason to do an official question into where the figures are.
Okay, I will do that. Thank you.
Okay, and we have reached our time limit.
Okay.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, Councillor. And we want to see you again. And you've committed yourself to a few things, so we're going to reach out to you again. And hope you can come and deliver gold, frankincense, and myrrh next time that you appear in the Zoom session.
In the recession.
I'm hoping also that
you'll be lucky if you get chicken and rice.
I'm hoping that our audience will grow exponentially by the time you return.
Okay, then that's good. No worries. And like I said, I'm here if you need me. Just reach out. That's not a problem. Okay. Well, thank you very much. It's been lovely.
Thank you.
Thanks,
all.
Sharon.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of the evening, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Bye now.
Good session.